This week's edition of NJBIA is Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. By PSE&G, powering a future where people use less energy that's cleaner, safer, and delivered more reliably than ever. By New Jersey's community colleges, aligning education to build an innovative workforce. Find out how your business can benefit at njpathways.org. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 67 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, there's growing interest in the educational opportunities in robotics and automation at New Jersey's community colleges through the New Jersey Pathways to Career Opportunities initiative. And here to tell us more about this exciting collaboration is the chair of the Department of Engineering at the County College of Morris, Tom Roskop. Tom, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
All right, so let's talk about this. This is robotics and automation. How and why is the County College of Morris pursuing this in education?
Yeah, so it's actually really important to us. A few years ago, County College of Morris decided that it really wanted to double down on manufacturing and engineering education. And with generous help and support by NJMEP and other organizations.
Great organization.
We built a whole facility, the Advanced Manufacturing Engineering Center.
Right.
And we really wanted to provide learning opportunities and pathways for folks that wanted to get into manufacturing, from apprenticeships and boot camps all the way through formalized education in our degree programs.
Right.
And, you know, one of the important parts about being a community college is we have to listen to our community. So we were talking to our manufacturers, and automation kept coming up.
Yeah.
And more folks, we need to be competitive. We need to utilize technology, especially as the federal government has been doing a lot of support in boosting the economy with manufacturing.
Yeah. Chips.
And chips, absolutely. Yeah. And we really kind of thought to ourselves, really there's not much there for students. And we've already got a robust program in manufacturing. Right. So what could we do to amplify that by getting into automation robotics as well?
Right. And I think the president of the college, Anthony Iacono, is a big fan of this stuff too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Ever since Dr. Iacono had come on campus, we'd had the opportunity to really be very forward thinking, look at a lot of the future trends and kind of seeing how the college can position itself, not only to serve the industry and business partners, but provide skilled labor in the areas that's needed both in our county and in the surrounding counties.
Right. What kind of jobs is this education preparing people for?
So what we're really looking to do is to provide technicians and technologists. Okay. And a lot of folks kind of hear the word technician, technologist, I think a repair person.
Yeah.
But really it runs a gamut. It has a lot of different areas. So you could start with a very basic repair person. You could go into implementation folks that are going to actually install these systems in locations, and ultimately even designers at a higher level of education. And so we're really kind of looking to create a pathway that's going to run the gamut and allow folks to kind of come in and come out based on what their skill level and needs are. Right. And we were very lucky with the help of the New Jersey Council of Community Colleges to get on board their Pathways program.
Yeah. And
so we pitched the idea last year. And we are now in our second year of trying to build these pathways up.
Yeah, it's a great program. Sometimes I think about the career opportunities in this field, and you mentioned how widespread they are, but they can also change as a person's going through life to different areas, right? They can go from one place to the other. How
Absolutely. So? Yeah, so what we find, number one, technology changes, right? So any person who's getting into a technology-laden field, they have to stay up to date. They need that training. Right. They need to be able to scale and build up their skill set. But also, folks, their roles may change, right? So you may come in as a repair person, get a few years under your belt, now you're very good at implementation. Now you're kind of the head honcho there that knows what's the deal.
Right.
And so now you need to upskill your knowledge and your skill set and get better. And we want to be there for all of that.
So how do students at County College of Morris get started with this?
Yeah, so we really wanted to build a flexible pathway that had plenty of on-ramps and off-ramps that students that had zero knowledge or even some intermediate knowledge could get started in the industry.
Right.
So from a person coming in green, they can do a boot camp, they can do an apprenticeship if they've already got a job lined up. And if they already have a little bit of experience, they could also come by and upskill by stacking credentials.
Okay.
We've aligned ourselves with SACA.
SACA. This is an acronym, Smart Automation Certificate Alliance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And this organization allows us to really look at a base skill set of knowledge that's needed for technicians in that area. So we've aligned our curriculum. We're actually allowed to give them a level 1 certification with our boot camp programs. And if they really wanted more education, they could formalize that into an actual certificate program on the credit side with the college.
Yep.
And that'll stacks to a level 2. And our hopes that we're going to continue that stacking to an associate's degree and eventually some alignment to a baccalaureate program.
You know, at County College, a lot of students come in and they're not really sure what they're going to do. So do you find that, like you mentioned green, I'm almost thinking like a blank slate.
Yeah.
Do they see this and go, wow, this really could be a path. There's
Absolutely.
money to be made here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one of the things and why we called this the robotics and automation really is the umbrella that kind of goes into all these different sectors. But robotics is what kind of draws students into technology at high school, at even middle school levels. They first robotics, see those battle bots and things like that. And so, students really kind of get pumped about robotics and they see the future. We see generative AI and a lot of new industry 4.0 technologies. They kind of know that there is a place. They are unsure how to get there.
Right.
And a community college is poised very well to help students kind of guide them into the direction through their offerings, right?
Okay.
So, and that's part of our thoughts with the pathway too, because let's say you're a mechanical engineering student, but you say, I really like robotics. Maybe I'll do a boot camp, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll stack a credential on top so that I can see if I really like it. So,
Yeah.
it's all about becoming available and letting them see what they can do with it.
Okay. What are some of the job projections in automation and robotics?
Yeah, so, in robotics itself, looking at Department of Labor statistics, it's about 3%, the job outlook. And, that's steady. And if you really think about the economy and how things have been going for, the past few years, as a lot of jobs and employment numbers have been declining, manufacturing and engineering has really been staying steady year over year. And we're actually starting to see growth in those areas. And for New Jersey itself, manufacturing, where we're trying to focus our automation efforts in, is such a huge sector of the GDP, about $60 billion,
totally.
about 10% of New Jersey GDP. And, that's only increasing, right? So we started about 15 years ago at about $500 million, now we're at 60, right? So we're projecting it's going to be staying toe-to-toe with that manufacturing sector.
Just on the growth, I saw a statistic, International Federation of Robotics, they said the proportion of robots in industrial settings doubled between 2017 and 2022 from 85 robots per 10,000 workers to 151 per 10,000. So that's almost a doubling within a 5-year span.
Absolutely.
From an academic perspective, do you think this program will help students, make this their bachelor degree beyond the 2-year? I mean, for other schools?
That's our hope.
Yeah.
That's our hope. Right now in the traditional engineering curriculum, robotics doesn't really have its own discipline, right? And you've got mechanical, you've got electrical, you sometimes have a melding between the two, electromechanical, and they're all at the bachelor's level. And implementation engineers, technicians, as I was talking about, the technologists, those don't require bachelor's degrees per se. And so a lot of students, by the time they've done all that work in a bachelor's degree, they may not specialize in robotics per se, even though they're well equipped to do the theory and the design. And so one of the things that we also wanted to try to target with this Pathways project was to take that gap in education, the associate's level and below, to provide training that that person who's really into robotics can kind of design their own academic pathway all the way up through a bachelor's program.
Does CCM have a 4-year partner in this at all?
So we do have plenty of partners with our current programs. One of our major partners in engineering is NJBIA.
Good.
And the majority of our engineering students do transfer after our time with them. So NJIT has been such a wonderful partner with us, and they're part of our conversations as we kind of continue to build this up into the baccalaureate. So one thing that CCM has, we are ABET accredited with our engineering technology programs. And so for us, we're kind of well poised to kind of take that and massage a robotics pathway through up into the baccalaureate level.
So Tom, I had done a little research, and there's different programs within the program. You mentioned boot camps already, but what's the Summer Institute?
Yeah, so we recognize that, as you had mentioned, there are students that are just figuring out what they want to do. And we don't want to wait for them to be college age to do that. We want to get into high schools. We want to let them know what's out there. We want them to really understand the careers. And of course, we want to let them know what we're offering as well. So the Summer Institute is a summer camp style institute that we've been running for the past few years. A lot of it is in conjunction with work that myself and some other colleagues at our institution are working with Pathways and NJCCC.
Right.
And it's a week-long summer camp that does data science and analytics, cybersecurity, manufacturing, and now robotics. And so that's exposing students to it, giving them projects so that way they can kind of see what goes into robotics. So programming, troubleshooting, some electronics, and things
And
like
do they think it's cool?
Oh, they love it. They love it. The bell rings, it's time for lunch. Like, can we skip lunch? Can we stick around and do it? It's really an enjoyable time, and you can see they're all energetic about it. Which is
And one more, Tom, Robotics Career Day. What's
so that has been really a highlight of year two. Last year, our first time at the Pathways project. We wanted to culminate our year in a career day about robotics. So we partnered with one of our industry partners, the Knott's Company, which is a distributor of robotic equipment for manufacturers and other industries. And we had an expo day. So we had exoskeletons.
Where was this?
So that was at the County College of Morris, yeah. So we really leverage our facility. Our AMEC building is a 30,000 square foot facility. That's really what we hope to be the nexus in the north of New Jersey for manufacturing. And robotics. So we're really aiming to kind of have everybody know that we're there and to showcase the technologies that are out there. So students, parents, teachers, industry partners, we all kind of culminated in the same place and played around with some toys and got to see what's out there.
It's great because they get to see some of this stuff.
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
hands-on. Last question, Tom. I think you started out as a math teacher at some point, and now you're into robotics, automation. What is it like for you personally to see students really gravitate towards this?
Yeah,
and which will help our workforce in the future.
Absolutely, Bob. So I think I'm trained as an engineer. I was an engineer in corporate for a while and working in product development. And I bit the bug in grad school with teaching and got into teaching. And really as an engineer, this is one of the biggest challenges is to work with people and young minds and try to forge a future that we all want. But there's a responsibility too. And I think the biggest driving force for a lot of folks like me who come from the professional sector into education is that a lot of these skills need to get transferred and they need to be able to move forward. So that way the future workforce, we say that we're training the future, but we're training the future workforce to work for our future. And that's really important to us.
Yeah, well said. Well, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
This is also a great job in New Jersey Pathways. They do an awesome job creating pathways for future work. You can find out more about them at njpathways.org. And for the County College of Morris, you're going to go to ccm.edu. Yeah, got that right. All right, Tom Roskop, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Appreciate
we'll be back right after these words.
Did you know LED light bulbs can use up to 90% less energy? And they often last up to 25 times longer than traditional incandescent bulbs? Plus, there are rebates for switching. Believe it. For more, connect at bizsave.pseg.com, your trusted partner in energy efficiency.
Learn how we're fighting for your business at NJBIA.org.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business as we now turn to childcare in New Jersey, where investments are needed and apparently being made, but challenges very much remain. And here to talk all about it is NJBIA Vice President of Government Affairs, Althea D. Ford. Althea, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Glad to be here, Bob.
All right, so before we get into childcare investment, this is NJBIA, Business Association. This is an area of great passion and expertise for you. Why is it important that NJBIA is actually tracking childcare?
Sure. Well, I mean, if you think about it, ultimately, childcare is the industry that undergirds every industry,
Right.
right? And so if we are wanting to be deliberate about ensuring our economic viability in the state, we need an all hands on deck approach, meaning
Right.
every individual needs to be able to contribute meaningfully to our economy. And that includes working parents and caregivers.
Right.
And so investing in childcare, keeping it top of mind, ensuring that programs that are well-meaning do not compromise the entire childcare ecosystem. It's important for us to pay attention to it because as job creators, we have to ensure that our employees are able to have safe, reliable places for their children to be so that they can literally show up to work every day.
Right. And also, childcare providers are businesses themselves.
Indeed, indeed. And it's so important that as we're thinking about the investments, we're not just thinking about how individuals are consuming the childcare, which is of course important, but also thinking about how these small businesses, many are women-owned and operated, many employ women,
Right.
and so how their contributions to the state's economy and to the workforce, it's important for us to keep on track of.
Minority-owned too, I think, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned at the outset, Governor Murphy's made a $1 billion investment during his administration on child care sector to date, but this should be good news, right? I mean, but where are we now? What are we seeing with this investment?
Sure. So ultimately, you hear $1 billion of investment.
Yeah.
Great news,
Awesome.
right? And it signals that there's some desire at the state level to meaningfully invest in childcare. But what we really need to think about is where are those investments going? Are those investments being made in areas that can become self-sustaining, right? Are we thinking about, are they one-time only investments that sound good and are great for sound bites, but don't necessarily meaningfully contribute to the entire system? And I think one of the areas where it's important for us to really delve into the details is around pre-K expansion.
Yeah, talk about that.
Sure. So pre-K expansion, obviously, I'm a working parent.
Yeah.
I have a 4-year-old.
Right.
It is near and dear to me,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can appreciate the pain point that comes with having to think about how am I going to afford childcare.
Sure.
And so for the 4-year-old, it can be a challenge because for those younger ages, the cost of childcare is different. And so the structure currently for the business of childcare is you have a 0 to 5 range. 5, you're thinking they're going to kindergarten, which currently, I mean, I know the state is moving toward, and many municipalities have implemented free kindergarten, and it's still a rolling thing.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking about the licensed childcare providers, you have the 0, let's say 0 to 5. Your 0 to 2.5, right? So prior to potty training, are perhaps your most expensive students to take care of.
Okay.
The ratios for those classrooms are a lot smaller, so that means you need more staff, right? And then you have your 3 and 4-year-olds, which are slightly older, slightly more independent. Those ratios are slightly relaxed. And so together, the two rooms, if you will, the 0 to 2s and or 0 to 2.5s and the 3 and 4-year-olds, together they collaborate from a financial perspective. So a business can say, yes, I have enough 3 and 4-year-olds, and the break I get in having to pay for those rooms can cover the increased expense it takes to take care of the infants and toddlers.
Right.
But it's part of the entire ecosystem. Where we run into the challenge with pre-K expansion and with preschool expansion is that you're now siphoning off those 3 and 4-year-olds into the public school system.
Right.
And additionally, when we think about investment, you're now creating an entire parallel infrastructure for 3 and 4-year-olds that already exists in the private sector.
Right.
So when you think about that investment and whether or not it's wasteful or at least needs to be reimagined, right? There's that. But for the small business, now those businesses who no longer can rely on those 3 and 4-year-olds to help subsidize in a way the cost of the 0, 1, and 2-year-olds, they're now having to make decisions about whether or not they have to reduce the number of 0 to 2-year-old seats they can offer because they simply can't afford it.
Yeah.
Or if they're just going to stop offering to infant and toddler care altogether,
Right.
which then has significant implications
Wow.
for us working parents who need
Yeah.
the care for those those students.
And, you know, I think, speaking from a distance here, I think compensation's an issue to even get employees anyway, right? I mean, so if you have less kids, or, you know, you're not able to pay them as much.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think one of the pain points around the childcare industry has been around compensation. For all of its merits, I think one of the areas that maybe the state didn't fully appreciate and perhaps is only now really feeling the implications of is minimum wage, which strangely you'd say, well, what would minimum wage have to do with this?
Right.
Well, in those difficult or more challenging industries to work in, like childcare or direct service personnel,
Healthcare sometimes.
healthcare, some of those jobs are very challenging. And so when you now are creating parity through minimum wage, and an individual might say, well, it may be easier for me to go into retail and get the same salary.
Or flip a burger, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And without having that more onerous job that comes with a healthcare, job or childcare. So it's creating almost like this adverse incentive for individuals who, of course, have the right to choose whatever area they want to work in, but it's putting pressure on those industries that need individuals working and supporting, particularly in this case, children.
Yeah, I got to be honest. Every time I've dealt with anybody in childcare, they may as well have wings and a halo over them.
Miracle workers.
Yeah, they really are. They really, and same thing for healthcare. So what kind of recommendations are you making? I mean, is it an analysis of where the money is going? Not an audit per se, but I mean an analysis of what works and what doesn't.
Sure. So I think that is very important for us to take a look at. All right. And I think overall, for any government investment, taking a step back and saying, okay, this is where we put the money over X number of years. How have those investments performed? Are we seeing the returns that we're wanting to see? Did we create adverse incentives? Are there areas that we now should scale up on? So I think just as a part of regular common practice, we should be doing that level of review, especially if you're saying $1 billion with a B dollars of investment. It makes sense for us to at least know if those investments were truly, appropriate and necessary and yielded a good benefit.
Well, yeah, and plus you have that investment and there's still these great challenges.
Yes.
Are regulatory requirements an issue with any of this at all?
Sure. So particularly with the preschool expansion, right? So there, the model is that school districts are to engage with private providers to ensure that they can increase the number of seats, right? And so again, as I mentioned before, in some areas and in some municipalities, the preschool expansion has created this parallel infrastructure for 3 and 4 year olds.
Okay.
So while you still have the licensed childcare providers that have seats for 3 and 4 year olds, school districts are creating an additional system that mirrors the private sector, which can be, I would imagine you'd want to really investigate that because is it necessary, right? But in other areas, what we've been advocating for in many childcare, the part of the coalition that we are actually a part of childcare providers and stakeholders, we are advocating for more mixed delivery. And that means incorporating those licensed childcare providers into the preschool expansion program. Because again, the system already exists, the infrastructure is there, and so how can we partner? But when we come into regulations, one of the challenges has been that for the Department of Education's preschool expansion program, they have identified a certain square footage that they want their spaces and facilities to have. That square footage does not align with the current square footage requirement for the Division of Children and Families, which is the division that licenses childcare providers. So here you have licensed childcare providers wanting to participate in this effort to expand seats for preschool students, but they can't gain entry into this program because their square footage, while it is a requirement for their license, and they are by all accounts ready to conduct business under DCF's regulations, They can't participate because of DOE's
DOE has
requirements.
a different set of rules.
Right.
You'd figure they get together on that at some point.
And so that's one of the areas that we are, we are been advocating for with the childcare providers and other stakeholders to say, look, this is one of those things that it doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah.
And it allows for what you want, which is an expansion of seats. Let's not get rid of those licensed childcare providers and their ability to give care. I'd also like to add, though, the childcare providers, the licensed childcare providers, when we're thinking about preschool expansion, the program is typically a 6-hour program. You're thinking maybe 8 to 2, 9 to 3.
Yep.
We need wraparound services.
What's that exactly?
So wraparound services, you think about if I have to, as a parent, I need to show up to work prior to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I need to work after 3 o'clock.
Right.
I need some place for my child to be.
Right.
And so many of the licensed child care providers offer, early before care drop off, after care services, weekend services. You think about overnights for individuals that have to work the graveyard shift, right? And so that level of flexibility is kind of embedded in the licensed child care model. Well, now if we're pushing everyone to the free pre-K and the state's program, it's all well and good, but you're talking about 6 hours of care with not always that assumption that those wraparound services are going to be available. Right. You add to that, Bob, right? And in addition, you have summer care, right? And then you have summer care, right? So again, when we're thinking about the public school system, you're operating on a September to June calendar. Right. Certain holidays, spring breaks, winter breaks. My job, love BIA, but I'm getting my 2 weeks off every, a year, right? Right. So when you're thinking about having to factor that into your model for as a parent, thinking about, well, who's going to take care of my child? Where am I going to place my child during the summer months? Where are we going? If I can't get off of work during Christmas break, where can I safely place my child? And so that's where the licensed childcare providers are filling in those gaps, and they are meeting the needs of parents and caregivers in real time. And in some ways, we might be sacrificing that level of support if we flood the public school system with our 3 and 4-year-olds at the detriment of the licensed childcare providers.
That's amazing. Who knew it went that deep? Just 1 or 2 questions left. Tax incentives, how do they factor into this?
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely an opportunity for businesses, whether as the employer, that meaningfully provides some investment to childcare, whether it's hosting a childcare facility on their property, or providing financial support to their employees to an off-site location. I think those are all very valid opportunities for the state to kind of come up with creative ways to incentivize employers to do so. I think there's a desire for employers to, provide options, especially as we think about the workforce and the changing dynamics of our workforce and some of the demands that employees are putting on job creators to say, I need the work-life balance. And what we've seen during COVID is when you are able to provide the flexibility, you're going to get productivity. And so for businesses, it's important for us to have conversation around, well, how can we create packages and benefits around childcare that are palatable, both for the business, but also for the employees that we want, to be productive. And so I think there's definitely opportunity around tax incentives.
And maybe parents could get, if they're spending money on childcare, are there tax incentives available for them, or is that being talked about?
Yes, and I think, yes, that's definitely on the table for options. And I think ultimately it's really about trying to find out or providing some flexibility, right? Because there are businesses that want to contribute, there are parents that want to contribute. There might be challenges in terms of like income levels and how that might contribute to the larger conversation. But ultimately, the fact that it's even a conversation, I think, is a win, particularly for the childcare community, which in some ways may have felt unseen. But the pandemic, if it's anything the pandemic has shown us, is truly what is essential, and childcare definitely rose to the top of that list.
Well, I have to say, you're bringing really much needed attention to it. So you've done a great job with this, Althea, and I know you'll come back and tell us more.
Indeed.
This is Althea D. Ford. We call her Althea D. Great. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, and we'll see you next time on NJBIA is Minding Your Business.
Learn about the benefits of membership at njbia.org.